Dongping Han argues that China's Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976 had many successes and discusses the influence of Mao's writings on those who participated. This event was part of a conference on the Cultural Revolution held at the University of California at Berkeley, hosted by Revolution Books.
This summer I was in Xinjiang, where the words rise. I mentioned in my radio interview this afternoon. I was there on July 3rd, and the riots broke out on July 5th. And it really shocked me to see 50,000 people came out with big knives and axes, began to kill people. I never thought China had ethnic problem like that. And I thought a lot afterwards. I don't think that's an ethnic problem. It's a class clash. And most people said, even the people who were trying to kill the Han Chinese, and the Han Chinese tried to kill the ethnic Uyghurs. It's not that simple. You know, the Xinjiang area is a minority region where the Uyghurs live. There are 13 minority people living in Xinjiang. The Uyghurs are one of the biggest. In the old days, when the enterprises in Xinjiang was owned by the state, in China we call it all people's ownership. When the state ran these enterprises, they made sure the Uyghur people were treated equally. They get equal employment opportunity. They got the same pay. They got the same benefit like the Chinese, Han Chinese, like myself. And the Han Chinese and the ethnic minority work together very well, like brothers. I was so moved when I was in Xinjiang this summer. On the one hand, the Uyghurs were killing Chinese. There were a lot of old Uyghurs came out, shaking hands with Chinese. Were telling us, you know, we are brothers. We are brothers. And the people who are killing people are only minorities. Right? Of course, it's not that simple. The reason why that old Uyghurs were able to tell the Han Chinese they were brothers, because they lived in the socialist time. They really work together like brothers, care about each other like brothers. But today it's a different story. In the last 30 years, most state-owned enterprises were privatized. The guy who was in charge of Xinjiang was a guy from my hometown, Shandong province. And his name is Wang Lequan. He had been #1 leader in Xinjiang for 18 years. During this time, most state-owned enterprises become private property. And mostly owned by people from my province, actually. So the private capitalists from Shandong province had a very different hiring practice. They would hire Chinese from my province first. If they couldn't find any Chinese from my province to work for them, they hired Chinese from other provinces. So the Uyghur people couldn't get employment anymore. If they did get a job, they were treated very differently because they didn't speak the same language, because they didn't have the same culture. So they were mistreated, right? So they have a resentment against the rich Han Chinese, #1. #2, in the old days, when the resources in Xinjiang were developed, it was developed for the benefit of whole Chinese people. And today, because these developers were the capitalists, they developed these resources for their own benefit. And the Xinjiang people had resentment against that too. That's why they rioted. The reason I see this is important is because I think this thing can happen anywhere in China. The class clash, the class contradiction in China has been intensified, and the capitalism. I think there is no way China will be able to survive along this capitalist path. The Chinese government tried very hard to suppress people's discussion of the Cultural Revolution. They didn't allow people to talk about it. I think the reason they were able to get away because the government never, Dong Xiaoping said, we will not discuss that issue. That's what happened in China. But as things become more and more, the gap between the rich and poor become bigger and bigger, I don't think the Chinese government's ability to suppress this will be very, very long. And Larry this afternoon asked me, there are mosques in China? Yes, of course there are mosques in China. The majority of Chinese people are moist. Why? The working class, the farmers, the workers, who enjoyed free education, free medical care, lifelong job security, want to get their benefit back. Every year I take students to China. They were always amazed to see the long lines outside mosque lane. The Chinese working class still have fond memories of the Cultural Revolution, of the socialist practice in China. And I think I'll stop here. If you have any questions.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. What we're going to do is open it up to questions, and I was going to kick it off with one question to you and then let the audience speak. We're going to have microphones. That's while we get the microphones all ready, going out among people, so you should raise your hand. And also, if there's anyone that wants to write up a question and send it forward, they can do that too. So again, just one question I wanted to ask is maybe you could give us sort of a on-the-ground picture of the kind of the new values that were being created in the village in which you lived. In other words, how did people actually change their thinking about each other and caring for each other? Or how was it that it became a community? And what was the sense of responsibility? Or did it change? And maybe you could give some illustrations about how the values of people, went through changes during the Cultural Revolution.
Okay. I always believe the so-called human nature is a product of the social climate and the social institutions. We are what we are because the social institutions in society. And the thing what changed the Cultural Revolution, changed the people's mindset or their behavior during the Cultural Revolution years is because people, the government, and the community care about each other. And in this country, the reason why we're selfish is because nobody cares about us. If we don't care about ourselves, nobody will care about you. But during the cultural years, in the socialist climate, you don't need to care about yourself. Other people will care about you. They will care about you as much as they care about themselves. I remember I told you a story one time. Is my friend, and he was 2 years older than I was. He's a very, very smart person, but he had a problem. He couldn't get up in the morning. There are a lot of young people like that. I couldn't get up myself too. I was able to get up because my father wake me up every morning. So every morning I came out to work, and one day this friend of mine didn't come out. the production team leader said, Dongping, go to wake him up. So I went to wake him up. I yelled at him outside his house. The first day, he answered. Oh, I'll be there in a minute, right? And he came out the first day. The second day, the production team leader said, go to wake him up. So I yelled, he didn't answer. I came back to the leader and said, he didn't even answer this morning. Go in, wake him up. So I went in his house, and his grandma said, the child needs sleep. His grandma was very old at the time. So I came back told the leader, so his grandma was upset. And the leader said, don't mind about his grandma. Go to wake him up. So I could drag him up from the bed. And I did that almost every day when I was in the village. And this guy is a very, very intelligent person. When he was up working with us, he worked very hard. Right? He worked very hard, so every day we dragged him along. And he did fine. He was very, very popular with his peers because he knew how to play an instrument, and he was able to tell jokes, things like that. He did very well, get married. A lady, he was very, very handsome, very, very tall. And he liked to drag me in front of the mirror to show. He was taller than I am. He was more handsome than I am. But that's what he was socially not smart or awkward. But in 1982, when the land was divided up, when the collective was disbanded, nobody woke him up anymore. And he got into a problem. And his wife left him. And he became developing mental problems. This is my belief. If a person was deprived his right to work together with others, he will develop mental problem. Right? So he was sick. So in 1998, I went back home to the village again. I saw a person walking naked on the street in the distance. I said, that's him. So I was running after him. He saw me, he ran back home. And I followed him into his house. I said, Daying, is that you? Naked? Walking naked on the street? He said, yes. I don't want to leave. Life is not good. I'm miserable. Right? So I tried, I said, you see, Daying, don't think negatively. Think about the positive things, right? Why couldn't you, right, start something new? I said, you said there are a lot of people in the village play instrument, right, at night. Why don't you join them? You are very good with your instrument, right? I said, don't want to see any people. Don't want to see others. I said, you can paint. You used to be very, very good painter. I said, well, remember you were able to paint horses very well, right? Why don't you paint? He said, no, I just don't want to do anything like that. I said, I'll be in the village for another 10 days. I want to buy a painting from you, so do one for me. He said, okay, I'll do one for you. And the next day he came to my house. He said, Dongping, no, I cannot do it. Give me 1 year. Next year when you come back, I'll give you a painting. I told him, I said, I'm not interested in your painting. I'm more interested in you. I want you really to stand up, to live like a person, right? He said, yeah, I promise you, I will. But after I came back home here, 3 months later, my sister wrote to me and said he committed suicide. And when I read my sister's letter, I cried for a long time. I knew if the collective didn't disband, and if the village was still working, live as a community, somebody will help him along. And he will not need to kill himself. But nobody cares after the collective was disbanded. I want to say a few more things about that, right? The reason why Chinese society became like that during the social time It's because people care about each other. If you have a problem, the village community will come to help you. And I will tell tell Lincoln this afternoon, when my father worked at the time, whenever he was sick, the factory management will use their only truck to come to my village to pick him up, to send him to the hospital. When people got married, for example, very young people, before they knew, the village management will give him some grain, some money to help him to establish a new home, a new family. So it's the kind of, the workers were being cared by the management. In return, the workers return their loyalty to the management. That's not a tradition. That's a socialism. And whenever it rains in my village, for example, you don't need to wake people up. Everybody rush to the collective threshing ground to take care of the grain, the public collected grain there. When it snowed, everybody came out to clean the street without asking. This is how the community work. When I was in primary school, every morning I get up 1 hour early with 3 other classmates to go to the classroom, to clean the classroom, to start the fire. And that kind of public spirit was never asked by the teacher or anybody. Nobody has assigned to do it. We don't tell anybody, but we just feel it's a good thing that we did something for the community, for the collective. So it's a social climate that made China what it was like during the time.